After the Battle of Ruusan and the subsequent destruction of Lord Khan's Brotherhood of Darkness, many believed that the Order of the Sith Lords had finally been destroyed. The shroud of the dark side forever purged from galactic history. However, the Sith lived on, guided by the last remaining Dark Lord, Darth Bane, who reorganized the Sith Order under the Rule of Two, which followed the tenets of secrecy and manipulation, the galaxy oblivious to their existence as the Sith laid the groundwork for their eventual revenge against the Jedi Order. Almost a millennium would pass until the revenge of the Sith finally came to fruition in the decades preceding the Battle of Yavin. And into this era of darkness was born the Jedi Master turned Sith Lord, Dooku. Instructed in the ways of the Force by none other than Yoda, the reigning Grand Master of the Jedi Order, Dooku stood as one of the most acclaimed Jedi Masters of his day, noted for both his near unrivaled swordsmanship as well as his diplomatic prowess. However, Dooku's ideals set him at odds with the Jedi Council, as well as the political status quo, often publicly speaking out against the amoral practices of multiple senators. As his fellow Jedi continued to be cut down due to the Republic's failings, Dooku began to question his place in the Order, viewing the Senate as incompatible with the ideals of the Jedi. The final straw in Dooku's departure from the Order was the death of his former pupil, Qui-Gon Jinn, at the hands of Darth Maul. Preying on the former Jedi Master's hatred for the Republic and secret fascination with Sith lore, the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Sidious, succeeded in drawing Dooku to the dark side, taking him on as his new apprentice and dubbing him Darth Tyranus. Shortly after his recruitment, Dooku would assist his new master in instigating the Clone Wars, gathering together a cabal of irate senators and financiers into the Confederacy of Independent Systems, and recruiting the bounty hunter Jango Fett as the prime template for the Republic's clone army. As the war unfolded, Dooku served as the leader of the CIS and the public face of the dark side, believing he and his master would see the Sith imperative to fruition. However, Dooku would eventually meet his demise when Chancellor Palpatine encouraged Anakin Skywalker to execute the Count aboard Invisible Hand, an act which was soon followed by Skywalker's own corruption to the Order of the Sith Lords, and Emperor Palpatine's ascension as the new leader of the Galactic Empire. Before his fall to the dark side, Dooku trained several Padawans to knighthood, the most famous of his students being the powerful Jedi Master, Qui-Gon Jinn. Revered as both one of the finest sword masters and one of the most powerful Jedi of his era, Jinn was something of an unconventional maverick, frequently butting heads with the Jedi Council due to his stubborn nature, itself the result of his deep connection to the living Force. Many made note that he no doubt would have been made a member of the August Body if not for this one flaw. Throughout his life, Jinn participated in such notable conflicts as the Great Hyperspace War and the Yin-Chori Uprising, though it would be the invasion of Naboo in 32 BBY that would put him to the ultimate test. After rescuing Queen Amidala from Trade Federation custody, he and her companions were forced to stop off at Tatooine. Here, Qui-Gon encountered the young Anakin Skywalker, a local slave boy with a strong connection to the Force. Recognizing the boy's potential, Jinn became convinced that the boy was the chosen one of prophecy, who was said to ultimately bring balance to the Force. After assisting Anakin in securing his freedom, Jinn proceeded to take the boy to the Jedi Temple for evaluation, though not before being attacked by the Sith apprentice Darth Maul, whom he narrowly escaped. Although frustrated by the Council's refusal to train Anakin due to his age, Jinn continued to serve the Queen as advisor and bodyguard, escorting her back to Naboo and helping to organize Naboo's retaliation against the Trade Federation's forces. At the height of the ensuing battle, Darth Maul would once again make his presence known, and Jinn, aided by his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi, engaged the Sith Lord. After a lengthy duel through the Naboo plasma refinery, Jinn was separated from Kenobi and overwhelmed by Maul's relentless assault. Maul was ultimately defeated by Kenobi, though Qui-Gon's injuries were beyond any hope of survival. With his last breath, Jinn made Kenobi promise to train Skywalker as his own apprentice. Transcending the physical plane as a Force spirit, Qui-Gon Jinn would return to aid his friends in their times of crisis. Hey guys, EvanNova95 here. Welcome to the first installment of the Versus series, Season 4. Today we will examine a match that I have long been interested in. The Dark Lord of the Sith, Count Dooku, versus the Jedi Maverick, Qui-Gon Jinn. Not only does it make for a good master versus student dynamic, but it gives me the chance to explore a concept that I myself feel has been grossly neglected in the Star Wars mythos, that being the relationship between the Count and his late student. James Lucino, if you're watching this, please make that Dooku book I suggested to your friend at the 2014 San Diego Comic-Con. You've already brought to light two villains who desperately deserve their own stories. Now do one for the villain who deserves it the most. Please, James, I'm sick of Vader and Maul. But enough about my own gripes. Let's be honest, who cares what I want? I bring you Dooku versus Qui-Gon Jinn. Let's begin. First, we will compare their physical attributes. Count Dooku was a human male in his early 80s, but he remained in very good health despite his age. In addition to being significantly taller than the average human, Dooku possessed highly developed speed, agility, and strength, traits that were almost universal with trained Force wielders. Rather notably for a Sith Lord, Dooku had all but staved off the physical degradation brought on by deep immersion in the dark side of the Force, only occasionally sporting the trademarked yellow eyes when swept up in a rage-filled frenzy, something that rarely happened. However, he was far past his physical prime, which forced him to be relatively reliant on Force-based physical augmentation to compensate. Age had also taken a toll on Dooku's stamina, and he lacked the ability to hold down a serious lightsaber duel for incredibly lengthy periods of time. That being said, he was still able to take on multiple Dathomiri Night Sister assassins, stand toe-to-toe with the likes of Yoda and Mace Windu, and temporarily sustain Anakin Skywalker's Djemso onslaught, which proves that he isn't some helpless old man. Qui-Gon Jinn was a human male in his late 50s. While he retained a good level of speed, strength, and agility, like Dooku, he was past his physical prime, which forced him to retool his lightsaber technique to compensate for his physical shortcomings. That being said, also like Dooku, Jinn's physical abilities were still considerable despite his age, and he was able to keep pace with the much younger and fitter Darth Maul for a majority of their duel, only starting to tire towards the end. As with the physical verdict for Luke Skywalker versus Mace Windu, the only thing really separating Dooku and Qui-Gon is age. Both individuals are past their physical primes, but still retain considerable levels of strength and agility. However, as was the case with Skywalker, Dooku's age puts him 1.5 steps away from his physical prime, while Qui-Gon's only puts him 1. As with Skywalker and Mace, I want to stress that this is an exceedingly minor advantage for Qui-Gon, as unlike Anakin Skywalker, the levels of physical fitness between Dooku and Qui-Gon isn't drastic enough to have a decisive effect on this contest. But as minor as it may be, I award Qui-Gon Jinn the physical edge. Now we compare them as martial artists and lightsaber duelists. Count Dooku was irrefutably one of the greatest lightsaber masters of his era, engaging the likes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, Quinlan Vos, and Asajj Ventress, besting all of them to various degrees. In the novel Yoda Dark Rendezvous, it was said that the only beings within the Jedi Order capable of matching Dooku in a bout of swordsmanship were Yoda and Mace Windu, at least at that point in time. Dooku's preferred and only martial arts discipline was Makashi, the second form of classical lightsaber combat, as he viewed the practice of studying multiple fighting forms diminished one's ability to attain true mastery of any one martial art. Developed during the time of the Second Great Schism, where lightsaber duels were a relatively common occurrence, Makashi was the only of the 7 Jedi fighting styles devised specifically for the purpose of lightsaber combat, building upon the basic swordplay previously established by Shi Cho. Eschewing the more aggressive and flamboyant moves that were the staple of other forms, Makashi relied on precise swordplay and economy of motion to disarm or outmaneuver an adversary. When fighting offensively, Dooku practically embodied the very concept of fencing. He performed his sword moves with blinding speed and a dancer's grace. His technique was a sophisticated assault, precise and conservative, with a heavy focus on pinpoint accuracy and balanced footwork. He was also adept at chaining in force-based attacks into his lightsaber sequences, often employing powerful force pushes to thrash his enemies about, and he has also demonstrated exceptional skill with the draw close move, where one uses the force to pull an enemy within saber range. His defense followed the same elegant patterns as his offense. Rather than meeting attacks head-to-head, he would rely on redirection and deflection, calmly parrying strikes while waiting for his opponent to give in to fatigue or frustration and move in to exploit the resulting openings. Makashi is the dance of the duelist, and that is exactly what Dooku was. He will disarm you or cut off your arm, and all with merely the flick of his wrist. However, as skilled a swordsman as Dooku was, he was still prone to the weaknesses adherent to his chosen style. Due to Makashi being devised specifically for saber-to-saber combat, blast deflection was not a practice the form addressed. While Dooku had trained to overcome this weakness, he displayed noticeable difficulty when faced with blaster-wielding assailants. In addition, the Makashi form failed to generate significant kinetic force in its moves, which made the fighting style inherently weak towards more heavy-handed swordsmen, a weakness that ended up costing the Count his life. A lightsaber prodigy at a young age, Qui-Gon Jinn was hailed as one of the most capable lightsaber duelists of his era, the renowned Jedi battle master Anun Bandara crediting him as the superior swordsman. Jinn's preferred lightsaber form was Ataru, the 4th form of classical lightsaber combat. Also known as the Way of the Hawkbat, Ataru was an extremely aggressive fighting style, based around elaborate but disciplined blade work and a heavy reliance on force-assisted acrobatics. The form also emphasized the incorporation of punches, kicks, and other physical strikes into one's lightsaber sequences, the intention being to use one's entire body as a weapon, rather than relying solely on the blade. As an Ataru master, Jinn displayed high levels of speed and acrobatic ability, and had a strong proclivity for chaining in physical strikes into its lightsaber sequences. However, his application of the fighting form was a drastic departure from traditional methods. In stark contrast to the much more energetic Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon was very grounded and strength-oriented in his moves. His retooling of Ataru no doubt in response to his degrading physical capabilities, which made the flamboyant swordplay of traditional Ataru harder to pull off. When fighting offensively, Qui-Gon relied heavily on brute strength, taking advantage of his well-developed muscle mass to unleash a devastating assault, hammering his adversaries until they broke under the pressure. His defense typically followed one of two different fighting modes, either buckling down and stonewalling his assailant, or using depth evasions to confuse and outmaneuver, a method he employed in a sparring match with his then Padawan Xanatos and former pupil Femur. One notable aspect about Jinn's retooling of Ataru was how it compensated for the shortcomings inherent to the style. He was highly skilled at blast deflection, on a few occasions using aimed deflection against blaster-wielding enemies, though he wasn't without his limits. Qui-Gon also possessed some skill in chaining in force-based attacks into his lightsaber sequences, though not without considerable difficulty on his part. Qui-Gon Jinn's reputation as a great lightsaber master is undisputable. His mastery of the fourth form, as well as his creation of his own personal style in answer to his physical handicaps, demonstrates a highly developed skill as a duelist. And his ability to hold up a high-intensity lightsaber duel with the likes of Darth Maul means that he could comfortably stand with the premier swordmasters of his era. He is not without his flaws, however. He is far from being the most tactically inclined of the Order. He relies more on personal strength and the needs of the moment rather than grand strategies and planning in concept with allies. While this strategy allowed him to adapt to an ever-changing battlefield situation, it also ended up being his undoing, as his rushing in after Maul without thinking allowed the Sith Lord to separate him from Kenobi, allowing Maul to face Jinn alone and overwhelm him. One factor that must be considered when examining these two is Dooku's and Qui-Gon's shared familiarity with each other's technique, and the influence that knowledge provided. As described in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, Dooku fenced Qui-Gon thousands of times, and he knew every weakness of the Ataru form, which allowed him to fight off other Ataru specialists with casual ease. While it's never been explicitly stated, Jinn's retooling of Ataru was no doubt a carryover from Dooku's training, as the personalization of one's fighting technique was a practice that the Count always encouraged. However, even when we take that into account, Qui-Gon Jinn is exactly the kind of opponent that Dooku is optimized towards dealing with. Jinn's application of Ataru may be less flamboyant than traditional methods, but it is still an exhaustive and highly acrobatic practice, and one that Dooku's deft swordplay would have little difficulty outmaneuvering. Naysayers will argue that Jinn's focus on strength drifts towards the aggressive and dominating side of things, which Dooku is weak against. While I do see the logic in this assumption, we mustn't forget that Qui-Gon's strength is nowhere near enough to break down Dooku's guard. And if the Count can withstand Anakin Skywalker's rage-filled Djemso frenzy for such a lengthy period of time, then he sure as hell can withstand Jinn's strength-based Ataru. While the familiarity of each other's technique goes a long way to aiding Dooku, no such benefit is provided to Qui-Gon, at least to not nearly the same degree, as his needs of the moment approach is in direct contrast to Dooku's calculated assault, which in turn makes Dooku the better strategist. At the end of the day, Qui-Gon Jinn may be a highly talented lightsaber duelist, and despite his shortcomings, I do acknowledge that he is rightfully considered one of the Jedi Order's best. But against Count Dooku, Jinn is, for all intents and purposes, simply outclassed on this front. Count Dooku gets the edge as a martial artist and lightsaber duelist. Now we compare their force abilities. Fluent in the use of various force-based abilities, both conventional and unorthodox, Darth Tyranus was a master of the dark side of the Force. Even before his conversion to the Order of the Sith Lords, Dooku was regarded as one of the most powerful Force wielders in the Jedi Order, in no small part to his decades of experience and study in the realm of Jedi lore. It was this extensive knowledge base that allowed him to excel in his Sith training relatively quickly, accomplishing in a decade what would normally take a lifetime of training. His expertise in the field of force-based physical augmentation were mostly due to his needs to compensate for his lackluster physical state brought on by his age. Beyond the augmented reflexes required for blast deflection, Dooku was an expert at covering ground at unparalleled rates with force speed, perform highly advanced force-based acrobatics, hold up high-intensity lightsaber duels for lengthy periods of time, and even enhance his strength to the point where he was able to knock Kenobi and Skywalker around with force-enhanced physical strikes. Dooku's combative applications of telekinesis were nothing short of overwhelming, ranging from powerful force pushes and pulls to thrash enemies, to telekinetic throws to pummel his foes with loose objects, to powerful force waves capable of terrible destruction. His telekinetic attacks have also been shown to consistently penetrate the force shields of opposing force wielders, with only the master-level force wielders of his era capable of mounting any suitable defense against him. And when I say master-level force wielders, I mean master-level force wielders. One of the Count's favorite offensive abilities was force-based strangulation, a skill he refined for both torture and murder. He was even capable of self-levitation and could remain suspended in the air for an unspecified period of time. Of worthy note, unlike most Sith Lords, whose telekinetic attacks followed the typical connotation of aggressively brutalizing an opposing force, Tyranus has demonstrated a surprising amount of subtlety in his applications, subtly probing a foe's defense for weaknesses to exploit, or taking advantage of a previously unseen home field advantage, which just tells you how advanced his skills are. Telepathy was another area in which Dooku possessed considerable talent. Beyond the basic mind trick, he was adept in the beast control ability, taming a wild crate dragon that he kept for a pet, though more advanced applications like battle meditation eluded him. He has also displayed some talent in the healing arts, curing his body of lethal toxins, and even fighting off 3 Night Sister assassins, all while having an unknown Night Sister poison in his system. Rather typically for a Sith Lord, Tyranus was a master in the use of Force lightning, and in combat was able to strike down multiple targets simultaneously. Dooku was also a capable user of Tutaminis, using it to deflect, redirect, or absorb Force lightning with his bare hands. Dooku can also use Quaitech meditation to cloak his Force signature, a technique he passed on to Asajj Ventress. On the whole, Darth Tyranus was an exceedingly powerful combative Force wielder, with a broad and well-developed palette of skills that made him a true force to be reckoned with. As with Dooku, Qui-Gon Jinn was hailed as one of the most adept Force wielders of his day, possessing a strong connection to the living Force, itself the source of where all practical Force abilities are derived, Jinn considering himself little more than an extension of the Force's will. He was adept in augmenting his physical capabilities to superhuman levels, allowing for the performance of various feats of speed, strength, and agility that were crucial to the practice of Jedi martial arts. Jinn possessed a solid level of skill with telekinesis, freely employing Force pushes and throws against soldiers and battle droids. The Phantom Menace novelization even depicts him completely dismantling a battle droid with the Force. However, he rarely used Force-based attacks in live combat with opposing Force wielders, preferring to rely solely on his martial might to defuse an engagement, and in the few instances he has used telekinesis in combat, he has left himself exposed to counterattack, signifying that his skills with integrating Force-based attacks into his lightsaber sequences are lacking, to say the least. Telepathy was where Qui-Gon truly excelled, the Jedi mind trick being one of the most advanced and often used abilities in his arsenal. In addition to influencing the minds of subjects to do his bidding, he has used it to induce relaxation and sleep, telekinetically communicate with willing subjects over long distances, and on one occasion successfully influencing a Hutt, a race noted for their immunity to Force-based suggestion. However, Tridarians were beyond his ability to influence. Arguably, he is most famous for his ability to transcend the physical plane as a Force spirit, surviving his physical death and maintaining his individuality. While this ability has no known combative applications, it does speak volumes about the strength of the connection he has to the currents of the living Force. As was the case with their martial arts skills, both Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn represent completely opposite sides of the coin as combative Force wielders. Beyond his ability to survive death, Qui-Gon Jinn possesses only the most standard and common of Jedi abilities, and his applications were very direct and featured little variation or creativity. By contrast, Darth Tyranus possessed a broad and diverse palette of skills, which he fluidly and creatively incorporated into his overall fighting technique, providing him with far more avenues of attack. Jinn's applications of telekinesis were basic and direct, while Dooku's were awe-inspiring in their magnitude and creatively applied. Jinn may have a more solid grasp in the field of telepathy, but such abilities are moot in a contest between two Force wielders who have been trained to resist such influence, and transcending the physical plane as a Force spirit obviously wouldn't play a role here. It's clear whose powers provide the greater advantage in this contest. Darth Tyranus gets the edge as a Force wielder. Now we compare their weaponry. Built to reflect elegance and precision in its design, Dooku wielded a single-bladed curved lightsaber as his primary weapon. The curved hilt was designed to provide ergonomic benefits, better fitting into the palm of the hand and allowing for greater offensive viability, due to the hilt changing the angles of attacks by the slightest fraction of a degree, making one's sword moves more unpredictable and difficult to defend against. While some moves were rendered more difficult to perform, many more were made more efficient. His weapon also featured a dual-phase function, which allowed the blade to be elongated or shortened in the midst of combat. His weapon utilized a single red-hued synthetic crystal as the focusing lens. Dooku also wore a cape which was lined with armor weave, which could even take a light hit from a lightsaber, though a committed strike would cut through it as easy as anything else. Qui-Gon Jinn wielded a standard, single-bladed lightsaber as his primary weapon. The hilt housed numerous small power cells, which allowed Jinn to better control the weapon's charge levels. The weapon utilized a single green-hued Adegan crystal as the focusing lens. The curved nature and dual-phase setting of Dooku's lightsaber provides him with more avenues of attack, and while the protection offered by his cape is minimal, in the world of lightsaber dueling, a little could go a long way to bridge the line between life and death. The only benefits provided by Qui-Gon's run-of-the-mill weapon is his own familiarity with its capabilities. Count Dooku gets the edge in weaponry. And now, the verdict. I think you could all see where this is going. Qui-Gon Jinn can't beat Dooku. Both may be highly renowned martial artists and Force wielders, but the reasons for their fame in these areas are for completely different reasons. Dooku is a great swordsman because he perfected a rarely used dueling-centric fighting style. Qui-Gon Jinn is a great swordsman because of how he modified his style to accommodate for his physical shortcomings, which in turn demonstrates his intelligence. Dooku is a great Force wielder because of both his sheer combative power and the variety of disciplines he has mastered, which speaks to an incredibly high affinity for the Force. Qui-Gon Jinn is a great Force wielder because of his academic knowledge and understanding of the living Force. When viewed next to Count Dooku, Qui-Gon Jinn is, in every sense of the word, overshadowed. His making things up as he goes tactics are in direct contrast to Dooku's calm and calculating approach. His martial skills play perfectly into his opponent's hands. His strength in the Force does not compare. His weapon does not provide as many benefits. Jinn's physical advantage is so minor that it might as well not even be taken into consideration. It really is astonishing how two individuals with in-depth knowledge of each other's technique can employ such radically different approaches to combat, yet still prosper from the other's influence. Dooku's knowledge of Ataru is used by the Count to combat other practitioners of the form, which in turn adds to his lethality. Qui-Gon Jinn likely used Dooku's insistence on the personalization of one's fighting style to aid in his retooling of Ataru. Setting aside the fact that Jinn never actually defeated Dooku in any of their sparring matches, Jinn just doesn't have anything that Dooku is unable to deal with, and his familiarity with his technique does him no good when his failings make him so ill-equipped for this contest. As for how this match would play out, I'd say the most apt comparison would be Count Dooku's duel with Thulm on Bakura shortly after the Battle of Geonosis, with Qui-Gon standing in for Thulm. While Jinn's own skills would allow him to hold up a brief defense, he would be swiftly outmaneuvered and disarmed by the Count's depth swordplay, either by slashing a knee or by severing a spinal nerve with an overhand slash. Once his foe was crippled, Dooku would use his force abilities to deliver a killing blow, ending the Maverick's life. I declare Count Dooku, Dark Lord of the Sith, the winner. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this kickoff to Season 4 of the Versus series. As always, you are free to leave suggestions for future matches in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys later.
I shed the blood of the Saxon man. I shed the blood of the Saxon man. I shed the blood of the Saxon man. I shed it at Vernon. I shed the blood of the Saxon man. I shed the blood of 4,000 Saxon men. I shed blood of Saxon men. I shed the blood of the Saxon man. I shed the blood of the Saxon man.